I know like one thing with people who indulge in the ketogenic or carnivore diet where they're reducing carbs, like one of the things that they have to deal with is high cholesterol too. And that's something that happened to me when I did it. Was I got my blood work done and my cholesterol, like my general practitioner saw my cholesterol and he was like, bro, you need to do something. You're like stage 10 heart disease. Like you're going to die.
Yeah.
And, I talked to Dom and I was showing it to him, and what Dom was basically saying was like, yeah, you can get really high cholesterol from this, but like it all boils down to like the plaque in your arteries. Like if you have high cholesterol, LDL or whatever, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And he said there's a lot of athletes, like a lot of very like high performance athletes that have very high cholesterol.
So you keep using the word cholesterol, right? We have to understand that we've got total cholesterol, we've got LDL, then we've got the HDL.
I'm talking about LDL.
Yeah. And that's another thing that's wrong with general practitioners, where they don't give you the full story, right? So this is what we know. If you've got what you want is ratios. Again, like I said to you, at my practice, we're focusing on ratios and trends. I basically want to say to you, this is where you are right now, but in 10 years, you're trending towards cardiovascular disease. I don't want to say that, but that's what we're trying to pick up on. Whereas a doctor will just tell you, you're fine now, and then you'll eventually go back in 10 years, they'll be like, okay, great, statin, right? It's like they're optimizing for a statin. When it comes to LDL, right, think of LDL, right? You have saturated fat, which is present in animal-based products and dairy products as well. Let's say you have your saturated fat and you don't end up getting rid of it. Okay, when it breaks down, it eventually leaves these little breadcrumbs, if you will. These breadcrumbs are your LDL, right? Your HDL is basically the janitor. Okay, so your HDL comes in and sweeps up all of the LDLs and you get rid of it. That's why we have our HDL. That's the difference between LDL. So if LDL ends up building up, right, and there's not enough HDL, that means that all of these little breadcrumbs are everywhere. And there's not enough janitors to go in and clean it up. Now, if you have a really high LDL, right, but you've got an even higher HDL in the ratio of 2:1, that's still okay.
I think my HDL is like 40, which is like the low end of normal.
Yeah. And so, I mean, again, if that is 40 but your LDL is 150, right, then that's a problem. We can even
like
see
the 200s LDL.
No.
Yeah.
All right. So that's where the problem is, right? Yeah. And you also want to look at ApoB, right?
Yes.
A lipoprotein B, which is, we really want to look at that. But let's just say you're even at a 1:1. That's even not sufficient enough, right? It's so funny because the guidelines, when you go to a doctor, the guidelines actually for LDL are it just has to be less than 100. Whereas if you really want to be optimized, it should be less than, in my book's 80, right? And you want to be sitting at a 2:1 with your HDL, right?
Your LDL should be about double what your HDL is.
Yes. Or even another measure is getting total triglycerides to HDL ratio.
Yes.
Which should be a 3:1. So it's all about ratio. So if you have, do you understand?
Triglyceride should be triple what your HDL is?
Yeah.
No more?
No more.
Okay.
So just think, right, you said you've got a 200, right? If I said to you, okay, great, but then if you had a 400 HDL, okay, it's high, but it still means that you're at the correct ratios, right? However, this is where things get tricky. We now have like hundreds of studies that show that a HDL over 80 is a risk factor for cancer.
Really?
Yeah. So you want to be really maintaining that. And then when it comes to arterial health, once again, right? If we are building up plaque within the walls of the artery, what are you doing, really? You're narrowing the artery. So what does that do? Blood flow.
Decreases the blood flow in the brain.
Yeah, it gets it there slower, okay? So we don't want that. And then eventually what happens if it just keeps lodging in the same place, that's what that happens, and then it stops the blood flow, and that's an infarct or an embolism. You know how you've got an embolism in your heart? We just call it a heart attack. Embolism in your brain, it is called a stroke. Embolism in your lung, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's weird. Yeah, cholesterol is something I just really never understood.
But cholesterol is good because the reason why I wanted to just get the nomenclature right is because we hear so much cholesterol is bad. It's like we've been around for how many millions of years?
Right.
Cholesterol is we need it. We actually need it to synthesize testosterone, right? You actually need it for the synthesis of hormones. So cholesterol is not bad. However, it becomes bad and troublesome when your LDL is at a certain place, and we really want to clean those arteries out.
And exercise and like aerobic exercise increases HDL, right? But there's you know about it doesn't exercise increase HDL?
It increases HDL,
right.
yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily decrease LDL.
Correct. That's why I was like, I didn't know where you were going with that. So yeah, unfortunately, but you know what it does do? There is a really great relationship. You can actually, with better arterial health from exercise, there are studies that showing the relationship between you're better able to metabolize LDL better.
Right.
Yeah, and that's actually probably my next task after I put this myokine research out there. I'm probably going to look at the relationship between LDL and exercise because for me, I mean, I don't eat terribly. I used to, when I was a triathlete, I was 40 pounds lighter than what I am now, but I was training 45 hours a week. I've got a great relationship with LDL, and I think it's because I've spent most of my life exercising. And I still spend a lot of my time doing something. Yeah.
Right. And there's people that take like injectable I know Peter Attia mentioned that he takes some sort of like crazy injection that like reduces your ApoB, or like people take it like like you take a couple shots a year or whatever, and it's supposed to like, it's the one thing that can actually suppress and downregulate the ApoB.
He's taking an injectable form of that?
Yeah.
I thought he was taking a little statin.
No, he was saying that I forget the name of the drug, but I looked it up and it was like $15,000 for a year's worth of it, and it was injectable. Okay.
Look, great, because we actually want, if you could, people are like, but what should our ApoB, if you can get it to zero.
It's the one thing that's useless, right? Like we use LDL, but ApoB we don't have any use for. It's like one thing our body produces that just hurts us.
But if you bring down LDL, it'll bring down ApoB, right? The thing that's scary is the Lp(a).
Yes.
The lipoprotein
I have
A, which is
great Lp(a).
Yeah, me too, which is great because you only have to test that once in your life.
And it never changes?
And it never changes.
Okay.
You've got... it's great because that's great for you and I. But when you used to hear like 5-6 years ago, even 10 years ago, you'd hear about a Tour de France, 35-year-old cyclist, healthy as just dropping dead from a heart attack. People never knew why. And we now know that it could plausibly be because of Lp(a).
Really?
Yeah. Don't you remember I remember back when, I say 10 years ago, but it was around then. I did my last race in 2013. I know that there were so many athletes who were so fit, and I was like, why on earth are they dying? They're so healthy.
Yeah, there's so many of them. There's not really so many of them, but like recently, even like LeBron James's kid had lifting weights had like a.
But what was that from?
Some sort of a heart attack. I don't know, but it's scary.
Well, that's an extreme. I don't know whether that was drug induced by any way. I don't know. Nothing was released, but that's a bit scary. I think he's 19, right?
Yeah, he's super young. And then there was last year that guy that played he played on defense for the Buffalo Bills. He just literally dropped dead in the middle of the field, and they had to cancel the game. Yeah, he's still playing right now. It's crazy. Yeah. He was able to come back.
Yeah, his heart just stopped beating for a while.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
I don't think that was an LDL, or I don't think that was a cholesterol problem, though.
A cholesterol problem?
I don't think that was a cholesterol problem, no.
No, people say it's...
Yeah.
But, you never know. He never came out and talked about it. I think there was an interview where they asked him what his diagnosis was, and he's like, I don't want to talk about it.